She kept yelling, "It's community property," while her men drilled holes right into my backyard. I told her to stop, but Karen didn't even look at me, just waved her clipboard like it was some royal decree. The sound of that drill cut through everything. My voice, my patience, even the quiet I'd worked years to build here. I had bought this land with every dollar I'd saved from 3 tours overseas. It wasn't big, but it was mine. Oak trees, a small cabin, and a piece of peace I thought I'd earned. The HOA line ended 50 feet before my fence, but Karen, the self-declared president, said the community voted to dig for water behind my house. She called it for everyone's good. I called it trespassing. When I tried blocking the workers, she smirked. "You'll get a notice in the mail, sweetheart. Don't make this harder than it has to be." The way she said it, like I was some helpless man standing on borrowed land, made my jaw tighten. Then I heard it. A crack. The drill struck something deep and a hiss rose from the hole, sharp, chemical, wrong. Within seconds, the air filled with a rotten stench. Karen gagged and shouted at the men to stop, but it was too late. The grass around the hole started turning yellow before my eyes. I didn't know it then, but what they'd hit wasn't water. It was sulfur, and that single mistake was about to destroy everything she thought she controlled. They drilled for water on my land and hit the poison that would bury their lies. By the next morning, the air around my backyard smelled like 1,000 rotten eggs. Every leaf on the trees near the drill site had turned brown overnight. My dog refused to go near that side of the yard. I stood there, hands on my knees, staring at the dead patch spreading like a stain. Karen, of course, showed up right on cue, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand, pretending she didn't see what she'd done. "This is your fault," she said flatly. "You should have informed the HOA about underground hazards before we started." I almost laughed. "You trespassed on my land, Karen. You had no right to drill anything here." She ignored me and started snapping pictures. "The board will review this. You'll need to pay for the environmental cleanup." I took a step closer. "You mean the cleanup for your mess?" She backed up slightly, forcing a nervous smile. "Watch your tone, sir. You don't want the HOA to fine you again." I felt something inside me shift then. I'd stayed quiet too long, let her fake authority rule over this place like a kingdom. But this wasn't just about me anymore. The sulfur smell was spreading across fences now. I could see my neighbor's garden wilting too. That night I pulled out an old metal box from the bottom of my closet. Inside was my paperwork, deeds, maps, and something else I hadn't needed in years, my military ID. I'd spent half my life following orders, but now it was time someone followed mine. She thought she could find me for her mistake, but she just poisoned her own power. By sunrise, the neighborhood was in chaos. People came out coughing, waving their hands in front of their faces as that foul sulfur smell spread through the cul-de-sac. Karen stood in the middle of the street, barking orders at everyone like she was leading an army. "Stay calm. The HOA has everything under control," she shouted, though she was the one shaking. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, pretending not to notice her until she pointed straight at me. You need to let our contractors back onto your property. We have to fix what you caused." That word, "you," nearly made me laugh again. I walked down slowly, stopping right at the property line. "You can fix it after you explain why your HOA papers say you own a well that doesn't exist." Her face twitched. "Excuse me?" I held up a copy of the deed. "Your team drilled 12 feet inside my boundary. I have the survey records to prove it. You didn't just break the law, you contaminated my land." She looked around, realizing people were listening. A few neighbors had phones out, recording. Karen's voice wavered, but she tried to keep her authority mask on. "Sir, I'll have to report this to the county. Maybe even the EPA." I stepped closer. Good, because I already did, her face drained of color. That was the first time I saw fear flash in her eyes. But it wasn't fear of the gas. It was fear of losing control. She didn't know I had one more thing hidden in that metal box. Footage from my security cameras. The kind that recorded every moment of her men drilling through my fence. Karen said she'd call the county. She didn't know I already had them on the line. The following afternoon, 2 county inspectors showed up, masks over their faces, eyes squinting through the haze. They didn't even make it 10 feet before one of them muttered, "Smells like sulfur dioxide. This is bad." I stood beside them silently, arms crossed, while Karen rushed over, pretending to lead the inspection. "Good thing I called you," she said sweetly. her voice trembling underneath the act. This homeowner, a veteran, was storing chemicals on his property. I almost choked on my laugh. You're saying I stored sulfur underground? She smiled like it was all rehearsed. That's what we're trying to find out. The inspector turned to her. Ma'am, you authorized an unlicensed drilling operation on private property, correct? Her face froze. I have HOA authority. He glanced at my paperwork, the map, the footage on my tablet showing her crew drilling. His tone changed instantly. This line here is the HOA boundary. You're 12 feet inside his property. You had no authority to touch this ground. For a long moment, Karen didn't say anything. Her lips trembled. We were looking for a water source. Yeah, I said quietly. And you found poison. The inspector looked at me. Sir, we'll need to send this to the state environmental unit. It's a serious contamination. Karen took a step back. This is being blown out of proportion. You people don't understand. But she didn't finish that sentence because just then one of her own drilling crew members, his boots covered in yellow dust, stumbled out of his truck coughing hard. He pointed at her and said, "You told us this was approved." Her face went white, and for the first time since she'd moved in, Karen had no words left. She tried to blame me for the poison, but her own men poisoned her story first. By evening, the entire block was taped off with yellow hazard lines. The news vans came first, then the county sheriff's truck. Neighbors stood in small groups, whispering, some angry, some scared. The smell still hung heavy in the air, and the once green lawns looked like a battlefield. Brown, cracked, dead. I watched from my porch again, silent, until Karen marched straight toward me, her perfect hair now tangled, her voice trembling but still sharp. You think this is funny, don't you? You wanted this attention. I stayed calm. No, Karen, I wanted peace. You're the one who brought cameras here. She looked over her shoulder at the news reporter interviewing one of the inspectors. Her fake smile cracked. They're twisting the story. They're making me look like what you are, I said quietly. She glared, stepping closer. You'll regret this. The HOA board stands with me. I raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Just then her phone buzzed. I didn't have to ask who it was, her expression said enough. She turned pale as she read the message. One of the reporters must have already found out. The drilling permit she'd filed was forged. I let her squirm for a moment before adding, You forged county documents, trespassed, and caused a chemical leak. That's not HOA business anymore. That's criminal, she whispered almost to herself. They can't prove that. I leaned closer. They don't have to. I have it all on camera. She looked like she might faint. For the first time, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood looked small. She tried to bury her crime under my land, but I'd already dug up the truth. The next morning, the sheriff returned, this time with county officials and a hazmat team. The neighborhood was silent. No lawnmowers, no kids, just the hiss of their equipment and the crunch of boots on dry soil. Karen stood on her driveway, still trying to hold her head high, but the fear in her eyes gave her away. When the sheriff approached, she straightened her jacket. Sheriff, I'm glad you're here. This man's been spreading false accusations. He cut her off. Ma'am, we've seen the footage. Her voice broke. Footage? I stepped forward, holding my old laptop. Security cameras don't lie. I opened it, showing her the recording. Her standing behind the drill truck, nodding, saying, keep going, even when her workers warned her about crossing the line. The sheriff's jaw tightened as he watched. Karen's hand started shaking. This isn't legal evidence. He's invading my privacy. The sheriff turned to her calmly. Ma'am, you invaded his property. He nodded to one of the deputies. Get her statement. We're opening an investigation for environmental damage and falsifying permits. She stepped back, stammering. You can't do this. I am the HOA president. The deputy replied coldly. Not anymore, ma'am. The crowd that had gathered went quiet. Then someone clapped. One of the neighbors she'd fined for having a flagpole too tall. A few others joined in. The sound grew, slow but steady, like the whole street was breathing for the first time in years. Karen looked at me one last time, eyes full of disbelief. You planned this, I shook my head. No, you drilled it. She thought she ran the neighborhood, until the law ran straight through her lies. A week later, the barricades came down. The air finally cleared, though the ground still carried that faint sulfur smell, a reminder of what she'd done. The county brought in soil experts to neutralize the contamination, and every test confirmed the same thing. The poison had spread only within the area Karen's team drilled. The rest of the land, my land, was untouched. Neighbors started coming by more often. People who once crossed the street to avoid me were now knocking on my door, thanking me for standing up. "We were scared of her," one woman admitted, holding a box of cookies like a peace offering. "She fined us for painting our fence beige instead of sand." I smiled, shook my head. No one should be scared of someone holding a clipboard. Rumors spread fast after that. The HOA board had voted her out unanimously. The county was pressing charges and she'd already put her house up for sale. I watched her moving truck pull out one morning. Same sunglasses, same stiff posture, but no audience this time. Just silence and the sound of her wheels rolling away. As her car disappeared down the hill, I stood by the fence line she'd once crossed so confidently. The soil there was being replaced, the earth slowly healing. My dog barked once, maybe sensing what I felt, peace finally. But under that peace was something else, a quiet pride. Not the kind you show off, but the kind you earn when you protect what's yours. She killed the trees, but she couldn't kill the truth growing under them. Months passed. The land had begun to breathe again. New grass, new leaves, new quiet. I rebuilt the fence she tore through and planted a few oak saplings right along the line, the same kind that once shaded this place. Every time the wind passed through them, it felt like the land itself was whispering, "You did the right thing." I'd heard Karen took a plea deal. Probation, community service, a fine big enough to pay for every dead tree in the neighborhood. The local paper ran a story titled, "HOA President Found Guilty of Environmental Damage," right next to a photo of the new community garden we'd built where her drilling site used to be. The irony didn't escape anyone. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat on the porch with my dog and watched the neighbors planting flowers near the fence. No board meetings. No fake fines. Just laughter and the sound of shovels in good soil. A young couple walked over, the husband nodding at me. "You ever think about joining the new HOA committee?" he asked, half joking. I smiled. "No thanks. I fought for this land once. I'm not signing it away again." He laughed, understanding. I leaned back, looking out over the field that was finally mine again. The air clean, the quiet real. "You know," I said softly, "they drilled for water, but they found something better." He tilted his head. "What's that?" I smiled. "Truth. They poisoned my land to claim it, but the truth was the only thing that ever took root."